Hi and welcome everyone to today's webinar on the topic Test Smarter, 5 Reqtest hacks that will boost your testing. We who are presenting today is me, Michaela Forsland, and my colleague Tobias Jansson. We both worked as Senior Customer Success Managers here at Reqtest. During the webinar, you will be able to ask questions using the Q&A function in Zoom, and we will make sure to answer as many questions as we can by the end of the presentation. And one very normal question we always receive is, will this be recorded? And the answer is yes, it will be recorded, and we will send it out, and it will also be available on our website. Today's agenda, we will give a brief introduction to Reqtest. We will discuss a few challenges we see when it comes to testing. We will dive into our 5 Reqtest hacks and end by summarizing what we've been talking about. And then let's have the Q&A. So who are we here at Reqtest? Well, we are the leading tool in the Nordics for requirements management, testing, and bug tracking. We specialize in making quality assurance easy for non-IT people and to simplify communication between the business side, the IT department, and suppliers. Reqtest has been around for about 14 years, and during these 14 years, we have helped large organizations take control of their quality assurance effort during both project implementations and during maintenance phases. We're very proud to say that many of our customers have been with us for many years. Some have even been with us for the full 14 years. And typically, customers come to us when they are about to start or even have started a project, and they realize that they need a professional tool to take control of the quality assurance. Here you see a selection of some of our customers. As you see, these are well-known brands, large organizations, very prestigious organization, and they all have one thing in common. They have large IT departments, but they need an easy tool to involve the business sides when it comes to quality assurance. So with that being said, let's deep dive into today's topic. Tobias, would you please just briefly summarize what is testing?
Certainly. And I think when we talk about implementing and even maintaining business critical system testing, it's the process of validating that the system work as expected, so that the function and the flows that you do work in every day, that they actually work per the way you have ordered the system, if you work with a vendor or if you developed it in-house. Now, testing encompasses, many large different types of tests. We talk about unit testing, code tests, system test, integration test, user acceptance testing, more known as UAT, data migration testing, and more. Today, our webinar will focus on user acceptance testing. That is when the business is highly involved. We also see that testing is becoming and will continue to become more important throughout the years, because providers are moving to cloud solutions, and you as organizations are these days more so forced to take on releases, sometimes up to as many as 12 per year. And it's very important to have a good test strategy around that. But let's dive into the challenges that we want to highlight in today's webinar before we go into the hacks. And, throughout speaking with prospects, with customers and partners, we do see a couple of general challenges that we do want to highlight, and where we believe a tool could be of great extent a helping hand. The first one, don't understand the purpose of testing. So there is a lack of understanding and an underestimation of the importance of testing today when it comes to large organization. And I think this starts already at the management level. So very high up in the chain, it is clear that we don't understand the reason behind testing. So how will you as a normal business user understand the why or what you're supposed to test when the why has not been communicated down to you from above. This is also two-folded because the second part is that there is a great misunderstanding that suppliers and vendors will do all the testing for you, or that you're buying a done, ready-to-use product that doesn't need testing. I can guarantee you all that it isn't the customer's responsibility in the end to test that whatever you have ordered is working in the way you have ordered it. Some providers will actually give you test cases to go ahead and carry out, but it is in the end your responsibility to ensure that everything is working as expected. Now, not understanding this comes with a great deal of consequence. For instance, if you do not test before you go live, you could come up or enter some serious issues post go live that could jeopardize the entire organization, which wouldn't be very good. There's also, of course, less severe consequences with not testing that doesn't entirely jeopardize the organization, but you could end up with workarounds. You could end up with additional administrative work or post-go live fixes that could be very costly in the end. The second piece, or the other challenge that we have come across when we speak to people, is that there's no consensus within the organization. And here they have come a bit on the way, to say the least. So depending on who you ask in the organization, they might be doing testing full on with a tool. Then you come to another part of the organization that is running a project and they're using Excel, for instance. And then a third part of the organization, they don't do any testing at all before they implement a new system. They might be doing testing from knowledge of certain people, rather. So there's no consensus here with what we should test, how we should test, or what tools we should test, right? And it could even be so that within this very same project, you have different methods of testing. Now, this leads to some consequences as well, that if you cannot follow the progress in one project when it comes to the testing, how are you going to know where you're at with the implementation, where there are bugs potentially in your implementation, and how are you going to look from a holistic view when it comes to multiple projects, or your PMO or your management? How are they going to know which projects are going well and which are not, if you're not using a unified way of testing? Today's businesses are driven by data-driven decision, and if you don't have this kind of data, how are you going to make data-driven decision? It could jeopardize the fact that you're not able to digitize in the pace that you want to, or at the pace that your customers require you to. And if we go into the last challenge that we do see when we speak to customers, prospects, and partners, testing starts too late. Now, the good news is we understand the purpose. We have agreed upon a way that we need to test, but it's late. And this is actually a lot of times customers come to us because they're ending up at this stage. So they've decided to take control, they decided that they need to test, and they're decided that they need to use a tool. But even at this stage, it could be too late for testing to be carried out. Now, there are some consequences of starting too late as well, of course. Now, it could be a restraint on the organization to gather the required resources to get to the tool and use the tool to test. It could be so that the consequences for this is that you don't have time to test everything that needs to be tested. It could be so that you have to postpone a go live because you're not done with your testing. But most of all, it could mean a lot of friction within the business, not only the heavy burden on the test lead to carry out a lot of work very late in the program, but also a lot of workload on the stakeholders or the people involved in the testing. And this could eventually end up with a lot of friction in the organization that you really don't need or don't want. So those are three major challenges, and I think we're going to go ahead and address some of them with our hacks.
Yes, and before we jump into the hacks, we know that there are quite a few here that aren't that familiar with Reqtest and the test module in Reqtest. So we're just briefly going to look at the main components of the test module. So please, Tobias, would you walk us through them?
Absolutely. So the test module itself is broken out into three main components, right? So you have your test cases, your test suites, and your test runs. Now, if we start with the test cases, now this is your foundation when it comes to testing. One test case with many test steps is supposed to validate that a requirement is met, or a couple of test cases together is meant to validate that a workflow or a process is working as expected. If you do have test cases within an Excel file, the beauty about Reqtest is that you can go ahead and import them very easily into Reqtest, so you don't have to manually enter these cornerstones by themselves. The second piece, the test suites, this is your way of organizing multiple test cases together that you're going to use in test runs to cover off certain workflows. So a test suite could be test cases that make up testing the scenario of a payment flow or a order flow, for instance. Multiple test suites together could make up an entire workflow. So for instance, order to cash, procurement to pay, and so forth. And the third is test runs, okay? This is your cockpit for test leaders. This is where you organize what should be tested, who should be involved in the testing, what is the actual result of the carried out and executed tests, what are the follow-up potential bugs that we're seeing, and what are we going to need to retest. So those are the three main components in the test module. And let's move on to our first hack, Michaela.
Yes, so the first hack of today is how can we increase transparency within our project? I mean, a very common challenge is that tests and requirements are often in different systems. You might write your requirements in Jira, for example, and you test in another system. So this means that we write requirements without any idea of how we're going to test them. And test leaders start writing test cases without having full insight into the requirements or any changes that have been made to the requirements. So not having this, common understanding of the work that has been done, the work that's going to be tested, that leads to frustration. It leads to differences in how we interpret things. And, in the end, it makes it very difficult to validate the requirements once we move into a test phase. So how can a tool like Reqtest help with this? Well, the beauty with Reqtest is that we gather everything related to a project in one place. So that is requirements, tests, and bugs. And everyone in the project team have access to the same information at the same time. It is easy to create requirements directly into Reqtest, or you can also import them if you have them outside in an Excel sheet, for example. From the requirement, it is easy to create a test case and connect it directly to the requirement. And in this way, you can always ensure full test coverage as you move on into testing. It is also very easy to communicate with the project members in Reqtest by using the comment function. So instead of looking through, old emails or Slack threads or, Teams chats, you have all the communication, all the information related to this project in one place, and that is Reqtest. And finally, you can also get full insight and traceability in Reqtest by using the changelog, because everything that is done is tracked and saved. So you can always go back and look at what has been done, who made a change, and when was the change made. And in this way, we can continuously increase the transparency throughout a project. Hack number 2, Tobias.
Yes, making it easy for organization to work structured with test. One of the challenges I was talking about was to essentially get the stakeholders involved, and especially late into a project now. So we understand that the organization must be involved in acceptance testing, but they do have other priorities, right? And when they have other priorities, they tend to revert to outdated, easy ways of working and maybe jump into Excel or test based on their own knowledge rather than using a tool. And as a test lead for you, it becomes very difficult to follow the progress and the status of the test face. But with Reqtest, we have, developed two significant features that reduces the barrier of entry for these business user. And the first one that we're going to talk about is Easy Test. Now, this was developed with one purpose only, really, and that is to involve the organization to work with structured testing, right? This is a feature that our county council involves hundreds of people on the daily to engage in the testing work. This is where they don't need much training. It only requires really 10 to 15 minutes of walkthrough, and your testers or the business people can be productive as soon as that. As a test leader, you build your test runs just like you normally would, put together the test cases in a certain order, and then you engage the people within the business that needs to be involved. You engage them via email. These people open up the test, Easy Test within that email address, and it opens up like this, like a very small, narrowed, focused version of Reqtest. It's basically like filling out a form online. So your users basically can follow the steps step by step and just mark if it is okay or if they fail at any point. So super easy as that. As a test lead, you get the involvement that you need from the business, and for them, they can simply test quickly and then get back to their work. So this is a typical easy way of working when you're involving doctors, nurses, people working in production, train drivers, and you name it. The second feature that we have developed is coming from great feedback from our customers, actually, and this is called flow testing. So this is some candy for you test leaders out there that really want to kind of enforce people to test in a certain order, and you want to go ahead and minimize the communication between the different testers when you're working on a large scale. So what you will do essentially is set up again a test run as you intend the test run to be completed. You assign it to certain users that needs to be involved. And with flow testing, what you have now is you have an enforced order where person B cannot start their testing until person A has completed their testing. So this type of testing is really important to carry out in a certain order. So we got you. We have this tool for you. And what we also will do is we'll go ahead and take care of the communication between the testers. So when person A is finished, person B will automatically get an email. And then when person B is done, person C will get an email that they need to continue with the testing. As a test lead, you get full transparency of how the progress is going. Any blockage or when test runs are completed, this will notify back to you automatically. So flow testing is a little piece of feature that we developed for you test leaders here.
Yes, moving on to hack number 3, and that is how can we decrease double work? So something we see that's very common is that when it comes to testing is that, you do tests in one system or maybe in Excel, and then you handle and fix bugs in another system like Jira DevOps. And what happens here is that you do your test runs, you get a bug, you register the bug in the test system, you're then registering bug again in the developer system where the bug is, fixed. And then you have to update the bug in the test system and retest this. I mean, I think you can hear it yourself. This rather boring, dull, double work. It not only takes up unnecessary time, but it also increases the risk of, we forgetting things or things falling through the cracks. So would we recommend that we should remove a system here from the equation? Well, we wouldn't say that because we believe that each system here fulfills its purpose for the user. So Reqtest or similar test tools is really good for the testers and the test leaders, whereas developer tools like Jira and DevOps are great for developers. So what is the solution? Well, we see here that more and more customers are integrating Reqtest with their developer tools in order to get an automated flow when it comes to handling and fixing bugs. So with an integration, a bug can be registered in Reqtest. It it then automatically flows over to, in this case here, we see Jira, where the developer can work on the bug, communicate back to the tester in Reqtest, and when the bug is fixed and ready to be retested, the bug report in Reqtest is automatically updated, and the tester can go in and redo the test. So in this way, we don't have to register the same thing in multiple systems, and we also reduce the risk of information falling through the cracks. Reqtest can be integrated with basically thousands of systems, and thanks to our integration partner, Workato, the process of setting up an integration is both easy and very cost efficient. Moving on to our fourth hack, and that is smoother bug management. I mean, let's just be honest here, guys. Bugs in projects are inevitable. They will most likely show up. But handling and fixing bugs in the middle of a project takes both time and money. And those are resources we don't have when we are in the middle of an implementation. We believe it should therefore be very easy and smooth to not only make sure we have tested fixed bugs, but also being able to go back into our work and see why has a bug appeared and what can we do, or what can we actually improve going forward in our project to decrease the number of bugs. Well, in Reqtest, it is possible to work with customized views, so you can filter the information to see exactly what it is that you want to see. So in this case, I want to see the bugs with status ready for test, and I can also see the link to the relevant test cases and also relevant test runs. So in this case, it is easy for me to see that, okay, this is a bug that is ready for retest. I can navigate directly into the relevant test case and test run, simply retest the bug, make sure everything works, and mark it as okay. And thanks to the fact that we in Reqtest have the connection from the requirement to the test, to the bug, and back to the test, it is also very easy for us to go back into our work all the way back to the requirement and see, okay, why did this bug appear? Was it a badly written requirement? Was it a badly written test case? Not very engaged tester? And in this way, we can draw a conclusion that improves the way we work with our quality assurance. So guys, time flies when you're having fun. We are down to our last hack. Tobias, will you walk us through it?
Yes, so now it is time to scale up the quality assurance in your projects. Now, as I mentioned early on, there is a challenge with reoccurring testing due to cloud systems. And what we see is that people tend to reinvent the wheel every time a new project starts. And this takes unnecessary time, and it affects the scope of the project, the budget of the project, and potentially even the quality of the project. So how can you address this using Reqtest? Well, within Reqtest, you can scale up your quality assurance and projects by creating a standard. And what this means is that once you started with a proof of concept project in terms of how you're supposed to do your requirements, or mainly how are you going to do your testing, you can now essentially copy this structure every time you have a new project or every time you have a new test phase, so you don't have to reinvent the wheel each time. This way, everybody in the business will have a process and a method in terms of how they write requirements, how test cases, most importantly, are linked, how test cases are written, how we do test runs, what data goes into test runs, what test suites looks like, how do we follow up on our testing, and how do we follow up on our bugs and retest them. As you can see on the screen here, you can even clone projects. So when you start a new one, you don't have to reinvent the wheel and start writing all these tests from scratch again. Actually, one of our large enterprise customers, they start with a base of requirements and mainly testing. And every time they do a new iteration or a new release, they simply clone that project, that standard that they have, and they're up and running with a new project within minutes. Now, that's scaling up quality assurance. So if we were to summarize this piece of information, Michaela.
Absolutely. So what, let's see now. I think there's an echo, Tobias. You would mute. Thank you. So what have we been talking about today and what hacks have we been going through? Well, the first hack was that how to increase transparency within your project by gathering requirements and tests in one system. And in this way, you can ensure full insight and full traceability to your work. The second hack was all about how we can involve the organization when it comes to testing by using functions such as easy test and flow testing. By using this, you can lower the threshold to involve the employees and make sure that they are validating your systems. Thirdly, we looked at how we can decrease double work with integrating Reqtest to developer systems such as Jira and DevOps when we work with our bug management, and in this way reduce the amount of double work and also making sure nothing falls between the cracks. Fourthly, we look at how we can simplify bug management with customized views, and also how we can go back into our work and draw conclusions on how we can continuously improve our quality assurance work. And finally, we looked at how we can stop reinventing the wheel every time that we start a new project by creating a standard for quality assurance, thus making it easier to scale up our quality assurance work going forward. So I will leave you with a final message. So to conclude, we recommend that you start using a professional tool like Reqtest within your quality assurance work. And with that, you put an end to Excel and other non-professional systems once and for all. Time flies, guys. It's Q&A time. Let's see what we have, what questions we have received. Tobias, would you like to start?
Yes, I can. So the first question that I see here is, do the organization's end users need to create an account to use EasyTest? And yes, that's a very good question, and we get that sometimes. And the answer is that the organization's end users do need to have an account to use EasyTest. So they do need a login and able to access that. So that is the answer to that. A question number 2, maybe Michaela, you can answer this one. Can you integrate with Slack and Trello?
Well, that is something we can look at together with our integration partner. But I believe the simple answer will be yes.
That is correct. Yes, the answer is yes.
And I think we have time for one more question. That is, can Reqtest be linked to Jira Work Management, Tobias?
Yeah, I think the answer is, as to the previous question, that is possible to integrate. I think one important thing to know about integration is that in today's world, really anything is possible, and especially with our integration partner, Workato, we can integrate to thousands of different other systems. So the short answer is always going to be yes. What we would like to do with our customers is to sit down and evaluate what is the benefit of doing such an integration. We want to understand and help realize what the value of an integration could be. And if there is enough value, then we certainly would love to integrate Reqtest and other systems to, well, either reduce cost, reduce risk, or reduce time spent on monotonous tasks.
Great. We are approaching 12:30, guys. We have a few questions left. We will make sure to answer this afterwards. Thank you guys for listening in today. As I said in the beginning, the webinar has been recorded and will be uploaded to our website. You will also receive an email I don't know if it's going to be today or tomorrow, with a link to the recording. So make sure to spread it through within your organizations, and see how you can level up your quality assurance work. Thank you for today, and thank you for listening.
Excellent. Thank you very much, everyone.